Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. Nearly 20 years after Travis Robertson vanished from Dixon Street, his case is getting new attention. Investigators say a miscommunication between Fayetteville and Siloam Springs police left the investigation idle for years, until outside pressure in 2012 forced both agencies to act. Today, Siloam Springs leads the case as Fayetteville takes another look. Let's go now to Travis's little sister, Sonia.
He graduated from Gentry High School. He went to the alternative school, but graduated with the Gentry class. He was a prankster. He loved doing impressions. He was our family protector. Sorry. He was our family protector. If anybody tried to hurt us, he'd be in the front line. He was very protective of everybody in the family. If anyone threatened us, or even in school, he was protective of all of us, even the cousins. But he was a good guy. He was an excellent brother. I'm the baby of the family. He was the older brother.
So what was that dynamic for you?
It was good and bad, just because he protected us a lot, but he also played pranks on us and also tormented us in the brotherly way. If we were making ramen noodles, he would hide the sauce pack. He would screw lids on really tight so we couldn't get them open. And then there was one time where he made cookies, and he told my sister Keisha, he said, "This one I made special for you." And Keisha said, so she's like, "I don't want that. I'm sure you did something to it." And lo and behold, she opened it up, like broke it, and it was full of those crushed red peppers.
So he was someone who made you laugh?
Yes, he was. It was, definitely, for sure.
And when he went missing, did things get quiet? Did you feel the absence of that laugh?
We did. Whenever he went missing, I didn't see him as much as I wanted to, but just because I didn't agree with his lifestyle at the time, but I still saw him whenever I could and still talked to him. But it was, whenever he went missing, you could definitely feel like a weight over all of us, and just like a dark cloud. I think the person that affected most was our mom. Sorry, she's been gone for a year, so. But it was the hardest on her. Every single night, he made it a point to call Mom and talk to her. And then whenever she stopped getting those phone calls, that's when she knew that something was not right, that something was wrong, that Travis was somewhere hurt, or just she knew that something was wrong, because he promised to call her every single night, and then those phone calls just stopped, and it was so hard on her.
So those phone calls stopping was the first indication that something was off, that he was missing?
Yes.
What was the next course of action for your family?
He was on Dixon Street in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He went there for the Mardi Gras weekend, because they celebrate Mardi Gras weekend at the end of February. And whenever he went missing, he was with a group of friends, and then Travis said that he wasn't feeling very good. So my brother-in-law at the time told him to go to the car and he'll gather everyone up, and then they'll just meet up and go home. And whenever Stephen and all of them got there, Travis wasn't there. They waited until I think 2 or 3 in the morning waiting for Travis, and he still wasn't there. So Stephen had let Shanda and Keisha, two of my sisters, know. And then so Keisha had contacted the Siloam Springs police department, because that is where he lived, and she thought that's where you're supposed to report them missing, because that's where he lived. And honestly, we've never experienced anything like this, and we were still fresh out of high school. And then my mom lived in Missouri, and she said, "No, you're supposed to report him missing where he went missing in the town." So she contacted Fayetteville Police Department. And that's kind of where we left it, was, okay, there's a case here and there's a case here. So we thought one of them were going to be looking for him, or looking into it, or something at least.
But they weren't?
They weren't, no. 6 years later is when we found out that nothing was being done. And kind of like I said, we were new to this. We didn't know what you were supposed to do, because we never experienced it. We never had a friend or a family ever experience something like that or go through something like that. And that's where Angela Taylor kind of got involved. And she is the one who found out that for 6 years, neither department was working the case. Siloam said they forwarded the case to Fayetteville. Fayetteville said they had no record of that. So everything from that night was gone. Video feed, everything, because it was 6 years later, and that's when they finally started looking, was 6 years later.
What was their response to you as someone, a family member, telling you all of this?
It was, we're sorry, it was our fault. We admit it fell through the cracks because something should have been being done. And it's one of those things where you're still angry, but you can't be so angry to where you're angry at them to where they don't want to do their job. And it's hard to not be angry. But it was one of those, we're sorry, we apologize, basically.
Sorry doesn't bring your brother back.
Exactly, it doesn't bring all the evidence back. It doesn't bring the video feed or anything like that back from that night.
How many hands has this case been in at this point?
Ooh, between the 6 years and now, probably maybe 6, because it just got switched over to a new detective.
It's like a whirlwind. I mean, how do you keep up with that? Are they communicating?
Yes, it's really hard, especially the times where you are like, oh, I need to ask him about this, and you call and they don't get back to you, or they don't respond, they don't text you back or anything like that. The detective we had before it got transferred to Fayetteville, he was the best one we've had so far. Like he'd stay in straight contact with us, straight contact, just, okay, well, you want to let me schedule a day and you can come here to the police station, we can talk.
Every single time it gets switched, what's going through your head? What is your mindset? How is it making you feel?
I was upset, and then I met the new detective, and I was like, okay, I think he was actually involving me in, okay, is this person? Is this, like, show me pictures, is this person? So with this new detective, I feel like I'm involved more, but as far as the switching the cases, it's hard because I'm like, okay, are they gonna do a good job? Are they actually wanting to do this? Do they actually have it in their heart to help search for Travis? So it's kind of one of those things where you don't know what it's going to be like, but you don't know if they're actually going to want to help. If they're like, oh, I know the history of this guy, so I don't want to help. It's kind of one of those things, if that makes sense.
When is the last time you had any sort of hope or answer or clue or whatever? Probably
a couple of years ago, but one of the people who were saying this stuff refused to talk. They were saying, yeah, I'll talk, and then they refused to talk. So that's when my hope was like, okay, now my hope is gone again. Because we heard that this person knew something, and then she said she would talk, and then she refused to talk. So that's when all the hope was like gone again.
So someone out there you believe knows something?
Oh yeah, someone. Maybe more than one person. I'm sure several people know something. They just don't want to come forward because they're scared, is my guess, or they just have no heart. One of those two things.
Do you have a gut feeling? Do you have any intuition?
Yes, I have. My feeling is that he's not alive. And if he's not alive, I just think that he deserves that proper burial. No matter what a person does, they don't deserve just to be thrown somewhere. In my heart, I know he's not with us. But I want him found.
What would you say to him if he was here right now?
That I miss him. That I love him. That I wish there was something I could have done to help him if he needed it. That he's loved by many people.
Large family gatherings, when it comes to things like the holidays, most people call something like Christmas the most wonderful time of the year. But what does that look like for your family?
Whenever he went missing, we still had those. We did the annual balloon releases for him too. And it just kind of slowly started dissipating as far as we didn't do them as much. Because Travis' favorite holiday was Christmas. He loved Christmas and Thanksgiving. And now, last year was the first Christmas we didn't do anything as a family because it was also Ma's favorite holiday, and she's not with us anymore. She's been gone for a little over a year. So now that neither of them are here, we just don't do family holidays much anymore.
You mentioned these investigators, and some of them did a good job, and you're appreciative of them. But what would you say to those who let it slip through the cracks?
I've got to be nice about this. That what if it was their brother or sister, their uncle, their kid? Would they want someone to do the same exact thing with their situation as they did with my brother's case? Because nobody should ever have to go through something like that. Every single person's case should be dealt with the same amount of time and care as any other case. I've always said it doesn't matter their race, gender, age, their history. They all deserve the correct amount of time for their case to be looked at. I hope someday they're going to regret it, because if it ever happens to them, they'll see where we're at and they'll see how we felt.
How do you press forward? What keeps you going year after year?
God. And the love and compassion that my friends and family give us. And then, but mostly having faith, prayer. Calling Nick has been a huge shoulder, a huge rock, because she knows how we feel. So I'm in contact with her and Taryn, and they're big rocks for us, for me anyway. But the biggest is just having that faith and knowing that someday I'll see him again.
I would imagine that having people that have been through similar circumstances is probably pretty important, because nobody gets it unless you get it.
Exactly. Some people, they're just, whenever I tell them, like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know. And it's even people who have lived around town, they're like, I mentioned like, what? I never heard about this. And it's one of those things too, where they, like you said, they don't get it. Like they don't get the emotions that go through. They don't get the anger that I feel sometimes. And I'll be some days where I just break down because I'm so angry and I'm upset, and they just don't understand that sometimes. And there's like, I don't know how to help you. So a lot of times they don't get it, which is hard, because I want more people in my life that understand what I'm going through, but then again, I don't, because I don't want people to have to go through it. Because it's not something I would wish on my worst enemy. It's something that I have to deal with every single day about, where's my brother? Is he okay? Is he safe? Is he hurt? Is he dead? I don't ever want anyone to have to go through anything like that, because I know firsthand that it's emotional. It's hard to have to deal with that every single day.
So I asked you what you would say to those who let this slip through the cracks, but what would you say to those individuals who are going to become the next investigators that are going to be handling these cases?
It would be to listen to the previous detectives who have done cases like this, and don't think that this case means any less. Every case deserves whatever you can give it. Do your best. Don't let it fall through the cracks. Don't give it the time it deserves. And that you can do it if you actually want to do it. You can do it if you set your mind to it and have the heart to want to do it.
And how old were you when you were missing?
I was 18. He was 23.
Do you remember the last time that you saw him?
I don't, because it was so long ago. I think it was a couple days before he went missing. And then whenever he first went missing, my sister came to my apartment, and she had this handmade flyer, and she was like, Sonia, Travis is gone, Travis is missing. And my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now at the time, was like, you guys are just overreacting. You guys are being drama queens, blah, blah, and just the constant nagging, and you guys are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. He's not gone. He's not missing. And then here we are, 19 years later, almost 20 years later, he's still gone. He was with the wrong crowd, was into drugs. I think that's the reason he went missing. That was because he was supposed to owe somebody something. He was also working as a undercover, I guess you would call it, for the Silent Springs Police Department. And that's also, I'm kind of, why didn't they care when he went missing? Because he was working for them. He had to make a phone call every single night at, I think it was 7 o'clock at night or something like that, to one of the guys at the Silent Springs Police Department. He stopped making those phone calls. So he had a bad history, but I think if he could have gotten away from that crowd, he could have gotten away from that stuff. With that, he was doing a big delivery for a guy, and they got arrested, and then he was told, okay, if you go undercover and help us with this guy, because he was supposed to testify in that federal narcotics case against this guy, and that's why he was doing this for the cops. So he got arrested with a large amount of meth on him in the car, and then he was supposed to work undercover for the police department and trying to get this guy locked away. He went missing before the court date. The night on Dixon Street, they were just having fun. These two guys came up to him, and that's, I guess, when Travis was like, okay, I'm not feeling good, because he was epileptic, so he knew if he was going to go into a seizure. But my guess is that he saw these guys and he wanted to get away from the friend group because, like I said, he was protective. He didn't want them to get hurt. So my guess is that he walked off knowing something was going to happen to him, and he didn't want anyone else to get hurt. And he told our mom that if he doesn't show up to court, that's when we need to really start to worry about him. And then he never showed up to court against this guy. Nobody was interviewed, nobody was talked to. And then 6 years later, they kind of is when they started talking to people, but people aren't going to remember much from that night, especially if they were drunk. They were on Dixon Street, so you're not going to remember too much. But yeah, no one was interviewed, nothing was done.
And these two guys that were seen, we have no idea who these two.
And we just know that they were two Hispanics. That's all that we know. Missing adults matter. It doesn't matter what their age is. It doesn't matter their history. They all matter. And if somebody out there knows something, just please come forward. You can do it anonymously. I mean, you don't have to say a name. Just say, hey, I know what happened. This is what happened. And then give names, a location of something. Because how would they feel if it was their brother? And nobody came forward.
It sucks to have to do it over and over and over again.
No, I don't mind it, because I want a story out there.
Yeah.
I want his name and face out as far as we can get it. Even in other countries, I would love it. I want his face, his name plastered everywhere. That way, even on a big billboard, that way if someone knows something and they can see that face every single day and know in their heart that they're a bad person because they know what happened and they're not coming forward, but they need information. That's what I want.
You never know what's going to convict someone.
Exactly. If it's money, I will find a way.
Let's listen to my interview with Angela Taylor, the first journalist to cover the case turned main anchor at our sister station in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I remember Sonia reaching out to me saying, my brother was reported missing 6 years ago and nobody's investigating. And I just thought it was really I said, what do you mean nobody's investigating? She said, Siloam Springs police said that Fayetteville's investigating. Fayetteville says Siloam Springs is investigating. So she says, for 6 years, we have no idea what's going on. No idea. So nobody was investigating for 6 years. It was so strange. I'd never seen anything like it.
So then what was the response then from both police departments?
So I went to get information from Siloam Springs Police Department, and they did not want to have anything to do with me. I'll be honest with you. Finally, I did a couple of FOIA requests and got some information where they had said, yeah, we contacted Fayetteville police and transferred the case there because he was reported missing, last seen on Dixon Street. Well, once we got a FOIA request from Fayetteville police, we learned that they never received any documentation saying that they were now the leading agency. Their understanding was that after Travis was reported missing, one of the sisters initially filed a missing person report, and a couple of days later, Travis's mother also filed a missing persons report with Fayetteville police. Fayetteville police went to look and noticed that Siloam Springs police had put him on a database for missing people. And their understanding, Fayetteville police, was that they were just assisting in the investigation. They weren't actually leading the investigation. So there wasn't any documentation ever that Siloam Springs police transferred the case to Fayetteville police, at least on Fayetteville's end.
So when you discovered all of this is unfolding, I mean, what was your initial reaction, your thought? Where was your mind at?
So I was upset for Sonia and her family because, 24, 48 hours are the most crucial, the the time frame of when somebody's reported missing. So we don't know where Travis is. We don't know what happened to Travis, but would we know more information had they started investigating like right away? Like, would we at least have leads on where he is? I mean, this went cold for 6 years with the family having no idea, that nobody was even looking into his case. I was completely shocked. So much so that I parked outside the Siloam Springs Police Department for hours until somebody came out, and I confronted them and said, "Why aren't you guys investigating?" And that's really what got the ball rolling on all of this.
This, in my opinion, not to insert opinion too much into it, but is the prime example of why journalism at a local level matters so much.
100% agree. I ended up getting my master's in criminal justice as well because I have such a passion. I always wanted to get it, but that really helped push it along because I thought, what can we do as journalists to help people that find themselves in this situation? Better educate yourself. So if something like this were to happen again, we would know how to approach it.
Do you think a part of the fact that all of this happened and, the ball was dropped was because of the time that we were living in? I mean, now we have things like cameras everywhere, surveillance everywhere, social media, everybody's got a phone. Do you think that played a key role in it?
I mean, I don't. I think had it been handled appropriately, if Siloam Springs Police truly wanted to transfer a missing persons case, they should have gone to the police department themselves and said, "Hey, this is who we're looking for. They were last seen on Dixon Street in Fayetteville. Because it's your jurisdiction, will you take the lead? We'll assist in any way we can." I think that police department dropped the ball. That's my own personal opinion. Now, I think they have made way since then by being more upfront with the family and having conversations with the family. At least after I left, that was my understanding. I don't know where they stand right now, but at least they are admitting, hey, okay, yeah, there was a huge misunderstanding, a huge mistake. At least they've acknowledged that. At the end of the day, I wish they would find him to give the family some closure.
Did they say anything about his criminal record and his past?
So, yes, somebody had mentioned that he possibly was going to be uh, a witness for some large federal narcotics case. And they're wondering if, somebody put a hit out on him because he was going to testify. Somebody mentioned that, but nothing ever came of that. I don't know the police officer he was working with. They never gave me that name. I don't know if it was somebody within, DEA or if it was like a local detective. They never released that information to me. That's all I was told, was he possibly could have been a witness for this federal drug case and that somebody wanted to take him out.
The family, feels as though, at least when I spoke with them, that had this been a missing child or somebody of prestige or somebody who maybe wasn't caught up in the wrong crowd, that this never would have happened, which we don't know that for sure, but
I mean, I will say 100% it wasn't treated as it should have been. You're right. If it was a child, somebody that came from money, I mean, it's not fair to take someone's background and use that against them when something like this happens. Like, they should have just taken it at face value. There's a man that's missing from Dixon Street. They haven't been seen since this time. They're possibly a witness in a federal case. Like, we need to find this person. Like, a crime has been committed. Something has happened to him. He didn't just walk away. But yeah, I can say that with all confidence that it wasn't a priority for them. Had it been a priority, they would have started investigating from the very beginning, and 6 years wouldn't have lapsed.
we might have a slug in a newscast for one day that says, "Oh, here's your yearly reminder that this person
Mm-hmm.
is missing. So sad, so tragic." But what about the 364 other days of the
Mm-hmm.
year when their name is not spoken out loud? Do you have any sort of recommendation or advice to journalists here in this area as we continue to carry out this case when it feels so cold?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you just have to keep sharing the story. And the good thing about his family is they're not giving up. Like, they will do anything and everything to remind the community that Travis is still missing and has been for all of these years. I mean, it is our job to remind the community, hey, one of your, neighbors has been missing for 20 years. We have to continue to share those stories. That's important to the family, and that should be the priority. I just remember being so heartbroken for Sonia when she came to me initially, and I was so shocked that what she was telling me didn't seem real at the time. I'm like, how has this person been missing for 6 years and you haven't heard from the police departments? Like, what do you mean? And I truly hope every single lead that comes in, big or small, I hope that they fully investigate it, because one of the issues was I found out during my investigation of this story that there was a police department in Chicago that had found a torso that matched the description of Travis, but the police departments in Arkansas never investigated it. And when I asked about it, they said, well, we did look into it, but then that was it. And so it was never talked about again, about this torso that could have been. Was it his? I don't know. We don't know, but they have a due diligence to investigate every single tip that comes in, big or small. I know somebody out there knows what happened to him. And I talk to police officers all the time about this. As years go by, people will have a change of heart. Maybe they've, turned to the Lord, whatever it is. Somebody's going to say something at some point, and we're going to find out what happened to him. It's just that we just see that one person to say, I've changed my life, or I've got to get this off my chest. I've carried this guilt for so long, and they're going to tell them exactly what happened, and they're going to be able to find Travis.
We go now to Sergeant Jesse Vermillion with FPD's Special Investigations Unit.
Essentially, the Fayetteville Police Department hasn't really looked at this case since 2014, when it was completely passed over to the Siloam Springs Police Department. Recently, we had somebody from the Morgan Nick Foundation reached out to me and asked, since Travis went missing in Fayetteville originally on Dixon Street in 2006, if we could look back over the case and just look at it as a cold case, and just kind of get a fresh set of eyes on it. Since then, we've reached out to Siloam Springs Police Department and spoken with their investigators and gotten hundreds of documents from them with everything that they've done over the last several years on this case. We've got our investigators just looking at it to kind of reorganize the case, again, just get a fresh set of eyes on the case to see if there's anything that might have been missed, especially in the investigation in Fayetteville, because like I said, we've gotten hundreds of documents from Siloam Springs PD, the agency where Travis lived at the time. And so they've certainly done a large amount of work. With the Fayetteville Police Department, it has been through at least 3 investigators over that short time period that we had it. One of our investigators has been in contact with the family just within the last few weeks to let the family, the sisters specifically, know that we were looking at it again, and just to reach out if they had any questions for us. Typically, it's where the person went missing is where they're entered as missing. So in this case, it was first reported to Siloam Springs Police Department, and Siloam Springs is the agency that entered him into the national database as being missing. And then since he actually went missing from the Fayetteville Police Department, that's why the family followed up with our department and also filed a report with our department, though Siloam Springs was the agency that initially entered him into the national database as being missing. I believe we only have one other outstanding missing person case. That was a gentleman named Michael Horner who went missing, I believe, in 2022. Unfortunately, in this case, especially back in 2006, surveillance video was a little bit harder to come by. Digital evidence was a lot harder to come by than it is now. Cell phones weren't as easy to glean evidence from, especially when you don't have them. Yeah, and unfortunately, right now we don't have much to go on. All we have to go on is are the reports that we have now, and to be able to move forward with those. Yeah, so typically we just send the case file over to that agency, and there's typically just an understanding with that agency that they are taking lead on that case, and that there's been an investigator assigned to that case. Typically, if it's a missing person case, we want the agency that's the lead investigator on that case to be the one that has entered that missing person into the national database as being missing. Unfortunately, with a case like this, they can be very difficult and just kind of a long process. We're trying to make sure that every stone has been overturned and that there's nothing else to be investigated. Yeah, so that's really just kind of a relative term. There's not really anything defines a cold case. We don't necessarily label anything, in our system as a cold case. A cold case is just something to where our investigators have exhausted all available leads on a case, and we believe that we've spoken with everybody who's pertinent to the case, and we don't have any leads to follow up on anymore.
Here now from Deputy Chief Derek Spicer with the Siloam Springs Police Department.
Where we stand right now with this case is Fayetteville PD and Siloam Springs PD have met, have gotten together, and we are now working this case as more of a joint effort than it has been in the past several years. So they're looking at what we have. We are always putting eyes on the case, and it's always really good to put another set of eyes on a case, especially one that's historical like this is, and it has so many different avenues that this case has gone down. So it's always good to put another set of eyes on it. So they're doing that, and then we continue to work it as we have, for the past several years. And hopefully maybe something pops up, somebody sees something that maybe someone missed or something like that, and we can get some resolution. The problem with Travis's case is that there were so many different players, and validity of people's stories, their memories, because as you know, the case went 6 years without, we thought Fayetteville was investigating it. Fayetteville thought we were investigating it. More than anything else, that was just a miscommunication between the two agencies, and I hate that for the family. But we were already behind, 6 years behind when we started, and what we were able to do is you really just have to start tracking people down and finding these people, because not all of them live the best lifestyle. And especially after 6 years, people disappear, people move away, they can't remember, they don't want to talk to the police, things like that make it difficult. So the stories, some of them are the same, but usually there's always different caveats to everyone's story. He was last seen on Dixon Street. Some people say leaving a bar, some people have said walking up a hill, some people have said a parking lot, a few other places, but all on Dixon Street. And some people can't remember. Some people, I didn't even see him. We've had people say they weren't there when we know they were there. It's just been story after story after story after story, and they don't all match. The actual case file itself is in a banker's box, and it's full of reports and documents and leads and things that our department has done, things that Fayetteville did. But yeah, it's a very large case, and there have been thousands and thousands of, men and women hours put into this case. Even though we were 6 years behind, once we assumed on it, then we hit it full force and went and overturned every rock we could find and investigated every lead we received. Some of us were a little bit familiar with Fayetteville, but when you start receiving leads in different places, it made it difficult in order to locate people. You go back 6 years later, nobody is going to have any video of anybody. Right now, if we were to jump on it and it just happened, then there would be video everywhere. And we could track this case and track Travis as he went through his night on Dixon Street. It would have made it a lot easier, but we had none of that, essentially. So we had to just put boots on the ground and go back to good old-fashioned police work and just start tracking down leads. Some of the people that Travis chose to hang around with did not lead the best lifestyle. Some of them did not want to cooperate with law enforcement at all. Some would, but then in other instances, you would just receive random leads of people that, oh, well, I heard so-and-so told so-and-so that so-and-so saw this. So to do your due diligence, you have to track that lead down. And a lot of times, those little things that are being heard, they're coming out of the jails, they're coming from the streets, from just people talking. And when you try to back those things up, oftentimes what we would run into is uncooperative people, or people would just look right at you and say, I never said that. This person is lying. This person's trying to get me in trouble. They were involved in it. And that was the road it went down for quite a while, trying to track down these leads and get all these interviews done. Either in the lead investigator on the case or assisting investigators on the case, there's probably been 6 to 8, just from our department. I can't speak for Fayetteville, I don't know. But one of the things that we like to do here is if we have a case like this that we're just almost at a dead end, we'll transfer that case to another detective so that that detective can put fresh eyes on it, go through the case file, go through everything we've done, see if we've missed anything, if something needs to be done. When I was assigned the case, one of the first things that I did is I had to recognize a family communicator, because there were the three sisters and the mother, and they weren't necessarily always on the same page. So I became, rather close with the family, particularly Sonia. She became a great resource in all the things that I was trying to get done while I had the case. And some people pushed back and there was some resistance, but once I was able to identify that family communicator and communicate through one person, it greatly benefited the efforts that we were making here in investigating the case and trying to get things done that maybe people didn't think about that needed to be done. So, and they were beneficial in helping. And then of course, all of us being in communication with Colleen down at the Morgan Nick Foundation. Love Colleen to death. She's a good friend. We were able to meet with them at the Morgan Nick Foundation on behalf of Travis, and balloon releases and things like that, trying to show our support for the family. And I think the family finally understood the position that we were in, and the cooperation greatly increased. Alcohol and Mardi Gras are kind of like hand in glove. They just go together. So what alcohol does is you have a few drinks, you're out having a good time, and the memory's not quite what it should be after you've had a few drinks. And then especially as time goes by, those things just, some of them truly don't remember, and then others I think do remember, but just don't want to be any part of it. So as far as alcohol goes, it hinders us simply because if you're down there partying like that on Dixon Street or any bar or wherever you're going to go, party, then it is going to make it much more difficult for people to recollect what they did see, what they didn't see, what they think was said, things like that. And I think that's part of the reason that the stories get convoluted. So it definitely had an impact. We have people from time to time that will contact us, and usually it's not because they do it of their own free will. It's usually because someone will say, hey, you need to talk to this person. They were there that night, they know what happened, they have told people they know what happened. So then you have to track all that down, and like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people just simply do not want to cooperate, which is frustrating, as an investigator, because my personal belief, since I have worked on the case, is there are people that know absolutely 100% what happened to Travis. Whether he's gone, whether he's run off, whatever the case may be, there are people that know exactly what happened, and they just don't come forward, which is often the case in cases like these. So that is one of the biggest challenges, is you get a random lead and then that person doesn't want to communicate and you can't force them to, especially now 20 years after the fact. The one we're working right now is Travis's. It's our biggest one, and generally when we have a missing person, we usually find them fairly quickly when we get in on the front end of it. But that's why Travis's case is so unusual and somewhat difficult. They deserve, if nothing else, to know, and not just so-and-so said, so-and-so said, so-and-so said. They deserve to know, and after 20 years of wondering every single day, I can't imagine how painful that would be when it's always on your mind. But I'm appreciative of the family, appreciative of, Sonia and Keisha and Shanda, that, they've come together and we've been able to do some good things with DNA recovery and, things getting him entered and looked for. We've followed leads all over this country. People think they see him with the posters and the Facebook, and, getting connected with the Morgan Nick Foundation was big for them and big for the case. So I would just encourage people, if they know something, to come forward. And if it weren't for the family keeping Travis's face out there, it's not something that people think about for 20 years. And if anybody knows anything, it may seem insignificant or may not, but they need to contact law enforcement. We worked with Fayetteville for a little while on this, a former employee here and a former employee there, tracked some things down. They did that for a short time, and then the case was transferred to me, assigned to me. So I started running things down, and a lot of the places we have to go to interview people, you always want to take somebody else with you, because we've had to go into some pretty sketchy places to talk to people that don't want to be talked to. And so when we took it and we started running with it, there was just so much to do, and you were trying to get it done as efficiently as possible. But at the same time, it was a lot of work put into that particular case.
Arkansas reports about 414 active missing persons cases in the state's official Never Forgotten database maintained by the Arkansas Crime Information Center, and you can find a link to that database over on our website inside of this special report. But let's go ahead and take a look at that database right now. So I'm going to type in his first and last name. I don't think I'll have to type in any other information, but if you wanted to do a very, very specific search to make sure that a bunch of names didn't pop up, a bunch of different profiles didn't pop up, especially if it's a super common name, then you might want to type in some other stuff. But let's go ahead and type in Travis Robertson. Just one, click on his profile, and that tracks. So we've got Travis Dwayne Robertson. He went missing at age 23, so his current age would be 43 as we approach 20 years since he went missing. He's a white man. His height is recorded at 5'3", weighing about 144 pounds. It says that his eyes are green, his hair is brown. And then you have some very, very basic information, including the case number, of course, the agency that put him in the database initially, which we now know was Siloam Springs Police Department, and the date he went missing as February 28th, 2006. Some alias names. And there you go. Some identifying features. 8 tattoos listed on his left and right arm, as well as his upper right arm, his left and right forearm, his neck, right shoulder, and left elbow. And then you also have a photo of him to look at. Of course, it is in black and white, so that makes it a little bit more difficult, but we do have those features listed right here. So you wouldn't be able to tell his eyes were green here, but you certainly can when you look up here and see that yes, his eyes are green. If you have any information regarding Travis's case, contact the Siloam Springs Police Department. You can report tips anonymously. In a statement, founder and CEO of the Morgan Nick Foundation, Colleen Nick, says for nearly 2 decades, the Robertson family has been unwavering champions for their missing brother Travis, refusing to let his disappearance fade into silence. The Morgan Nick Foundation is privileged to walk this difficult journey with them, bringing together law enforcement agencies, coordinating vital resources, and providing the sustained advocacy that keeps cases from growing cold. Their fight is our fight, and together we will continue searching for the truth. Our 2-hour special on the disappearance of Morgan Nick, 30 years later, also available right now on 479 First. Chasing Fireflies, a Morgan Nick special. My special report on Travis Robertson airs Sunday night after the game. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk About It. Be safe, healthy, happy, and have a wonderful week.